Hey guys, and welcome back to Old World Wednesday. In today's video, I'm going to be painting up one of the original Warhammer Fantasy plastic houses that I stole from an old Games Workshop when I worked there that it wasn't used anymore. It was going to get thrown out, so I just took it home. Games Workshop always had this thing where they didn't really like to display things that they didn't currently sell. So once the old world kind of went away, all that old fantasy scenery just was gotten rid of. So I managed to pick up a few key pieces, which I had played on for years beforehand. Even before I started working there, these old houses were in existence, but they're old and battered and missing pieces. And I think that's kind of sad. And I saw an awesome Instagram post earlier in the week with some awesome fantasy houses done up. And I thought it was time that I tried to crack one out and make it look nice. I don't want to go crazy, bright and vibrant. I wanted to kind of sit well in the fantasy theme, surrounded by trees and hills and stuff like that, and look awesome. So that's my goal for today, is to try and make it look really nice, but not really gaudy and standoutish. Before I get in and get started on that house, I just want to say a huge thank you to everyone that supports the channel by watching the videos, liking, commenting, subscribing. They're all super important. Please continue to do those, especially that subscribing one. Lots of people hit that subscribe button. Thank you very much. On all three channels, that'd be great. And anyway, there goes the extra mile supports over on Patreon. You guys are the heroes that keep the channel going. If you want to help with that, it's obviously linked down below. There's a million reasons to be involved with it. We do extra videos, do podcast episodes, private Discord server, and we do monthly giveaways. You may notice that there is 2 Armageddon box sets under my hands. This one is empty, that is my one. This one is completely full, and that is one I'll be giving away to one lucky patron at the end of this month. So if you want to be in a chance of winning the Armageddon box set, all you need to do is be signed up to Patreon at any tier. Okay, with that out of the way, let's dive in and get this fantasy house painted up. Okay, here is the old fantasy house, and as you can see, it has seen better days. Missing chimney, chipped and broken. The paint job is not great. It was very fastly done back in the day by the Games Workshop staff, because they had to do probably 10 of these for a thing, so it's not in the greatest of shape. So let's try and bring it back to life today. First thing I'm going to do is dust it. Got an old, big, soft dry brush, and I just went all over it, and you can see all the old dust from 25 years plus of build-up getting wiped away and cleaned off. When that was done, I took my scalpel and I tried to clean up as much of the rough edges as possible. This wasn't constructed very well either. Once again, don't blame those guys. I've been in that situation many a time where I'm building 10 of something for an event and it gets very tedious and very annoying. So just trying to get rid of some of those lines as best I can, especially across the top, which is what you're going to be looking down on when you're using this thing. I found this old sprue of, I don't know, laser cut stuff. I think it makes crates or a bench or something. I don't know. It's from an old project. I can't really remember what it's from. But I just stole one of the panels out of it because I thought it would make a perfect thing to block in the old chimney. I'm basically going to count it as just one of those like little latch thingies or a little door. So I just got that. I measured it, roughly traced the line and cut it across. I snipped it off and then I glued it into place to just block up that hole. Very simple, a quick and easy thing to do, but it solved the problem. If I was inclined, I might have tried to go online and got the digital file of a house with a chimney already, digitally cut that chimney off, cut it to the right angle of the roof and then glued it in place. I just wasn't bothered to do that. It was going to be a lot of work just to add a chimney stack. I sprayed the thing matte black and then it was time to start adding paint. Now, like I said, the last one was very kind of bright and vibrant and garish, and I decided that's not really the direction I want to go. I want this thing to sit on a fantasy table and look really nice, but just more blend into the background than be the screaming centerpiece of the whole table. The army should always be the centerpiece. So yeah, I keep calling this thing a house. It's a chapel in the end of the, I'm sorry that I keep calling it that. After I got the Mechanicus standard grey coat on, I grabbed some Seraphim Sepia and I just painted this across all of the brickwork that you can see across this piece. Just add a little bit more definition to all those bricks with an old pot of sepia. And then I waited for this to dry before I can then actually go in and start building up those greys a little bit more. And with that sepia fully dried, we then reached for our Dawn Stone paint and dry brush this across all of those brickwork and the flat surfaces as well. Because this thing has been sprayed and painted and sprayed and painted, there's actually quite a nice bit of texture on the old flat surface. This model may have even benefited from a coat of rough coat. If anyone can remember what rough coat was, it was an old product that Games Workshop used to sell specifically for scratch build terrain. Because Games Workshop doesn't promote scratch build terrain anymore, This thing has long been gone. Basically, it was a can of aerosol spray that when you sprayed it over a surface, it left behind little kind of rough bumps, which then obviously made it possible to dry brush and have some of the texture show up. I think this may have gotten an original coat of that. I can't be 100% sure. We then grabbed some Rhinox hide and started to block in some of the brown paints, obviously the door, and then all of the beams holding up the roof got a nice coat of Rhinox hide as well. I love Rhinox hide. It's probably my favorite brown color. It's definitely the base coat for pretty much every brown leather thing I ever did, if it's not in contrast. Gargak Sewer was then grabbed just to fill in all those shutters. I wanted it to be more of a yellowy brown, but because it was kind of concentrated in a small area, it stayed really, really dark. I didn't mind that too much. I could have gone back and hit it with a highlight dry brush afterwards. I never did. It kind of just blends into the background. I think that's okay. I think it's okay to be like that, because the nice bright walls, the nice dark shutters actually was a nice complement to it. Okay, now time to start getting some color on the roof. I was deciding between red and blue. Laura then dictated that it was blue, so blue it is. So Cantor Blue was then pulled out and applied as a solid coat across all of those shingles, once again using a large flat dry brush. Obviously this thing not having a chimney stack and stuff, it's going to be quite simple to just, you know, slap on a really thick base coat and then dry brush up through different layers of kind of brighter blues and not worry too much about hitting anything else. So painting the roof section actually was very, very fast, which was a nice change of pace from other details. Now, with the roof got its solid coat of Cantor Blue, it was time for the first dry brush. And for that, we moved into Calgar Blue, which is nice and bright. And then we're just going a nice back and forth motion with the Calgar Blue, which is going to catch all the detail on the shingles and highlight those up really, really nicely. We're going to do this basically 3 times, just getting brighter and brighter with each one, which will add a lot of depth and definition to the shingles. The mid-tone for the roof dry brush is going to be a nice coat of Fenrisian Grey, which is then pushing it into the kind of bluey grey texture, which is obviously going to help it blend into the wall section a little bit more, and once again not make the roof be super gaudy and crazy looking. The blue shingles definitely scream fantasy though, very kind of World of Warcraft, very Osgiliath, very, you know, that kind of thing. So I think this works a treat. And then for the last color going up, we're going to grab our Blue Horror and do the very last dry brush across the shingles with that. Each time we go in, we're going to go lighter and lighter, which is, like I said, it's just going to add so much depth to those shingles, and I think they turn out really, really nice. If you wanted to go for red shingles, you would just go kind of Mephiston, Evil Sons, Wild Wilder, same dry brushes over the top, and it would look really, really nice as well. It's then time to start blocking in some of the details. So we have lead belcher first, and then obviously there's a bunch of hinges on doors, and then they've got some of those metal braces going around corners, holding the building together, I guess. And then a few other studs and bits and pieces to get blocked in with that lead belcher paint. After this, it's time to move on to Retributor Armor Gold, and obviously this is a chapel, so there is going to be lots of holy iconography on this thing. And this was a bit where I kind of paused for a minute. I wasn't sure how far I was going to push the gold. I knew the big beautiful Sigmarite hammer on the door was going to go gold, and I knew all the countersunk statues were going to be done in gold, but I wasn't sure about the symbols going around the band, like midway up the wall. I was half tempted to just leave them as like carved stone, but I felt like, I don't know, the rock, the whole thing, the facade was just screaming a little bit too grey, and I thought the gold might add just that little bit of accent that the whole piece needs to make it stand out. So here's all the gold, and as you can see, I think it does add exactly what the kind of piece needed, and I was happy with it. Steel Legion Drab was then used to base coat in all the skulls, and there is other countersunk little, I can't remember the word for a small like alcove, I guess an alcove, the alcoves, and just blocked in all the skulls in with the Steel Legion Drab paint. And then once that was done, it was time to grab a Seraphim Sepia again, and this is just throw a quick shade across these kind of bony sections, and then some of the gold. I didn't want to hit the ones going around the middle because I knew I would overhit everything and that would be a disaster. But all the other sections, the statues, the crosses, the hammer on the door, all those bits are going to get hit with a nice coat of the Seraphim Sepia to add a nice bit of shading to them. Then it was time to start layering up those details. So we grabbed some more gassed bone as the first highlight for the bone. So all those skulls got done with a nice coat of that. And we did end up jumping up by one more color to Screaming Skull and layering them up once again. These are really nice details, obviously, with the whole, you know, death is almost a religion when it comes to the Empire, where they worship Mor, which is like the god of death. Skulls is definitely something that is on all pieces of scenery. So having a very quick and easy way of doing it. And of course, all those skulls matching across the different projects is going to be really, really nice. A little bit of Liberator gold then to highlight the gold section. So spending a little bit of time on those statues and kind of all the different holy relics that are built into this chapel. It really does help make those bits pop. Now, another bit that I forgot to hit record on, but we did actually grab some lead belcher paint and we went back over kind of those door struts and the door handle and any other of the silver parts popping out with a little highlight just like this gold. Now for my favorite detail, and something we definitely didn't have when we painted these the first time around, was dirty down moss. And obviously it just gives a really great mossy effect, and old chapels and old fantasy buildings I definitely think have been around a long time. So I like making them look that way. This paint is absolutely incredible, or I don't know if you can count that as a paint, as technical tool or whatever. It's important to make sure you shake the ever-loving hell out of the pot before you use it. I even go as far as to screw off the lid and put in a scraping tool, and I stir the bottom and mix it all up because it can just get congealed at the bottom. But once it's fully mixed, it does do a great job. And I basically didn't really know how much of it I was going to apply. I started doing corners and started doing a little bit between the bricks. And then I realized that it just looks really cool between all the bricks. And I think that's definitely somewhere where an old building moss would kind of build up and stuff. So that's what I went with. I went for all of those bits and pieces. And this was the final result. This is my finished fantasy chapel, a building I've wanted to paint for myself for many, many years. And I finally have a nice one painted up and ready for my collection. I do have the fortified manor, and I do have a bunch of the old watchtowers to do as well. So hopefully I can get those matching this and on the tabletop for some Games of Old World very soon. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this. If you did, make sure to let me know in the comments below, and make sure to check out Patreon if you want to be in with the chance of winning that Armageddon.